Namaste, sir.
Namaste, sir.
You're on mute, sir.
So,
Namaste.
Namaste, sir. So, Dakshinamurti garu meer chadutara idi.
Faith and surrender, sir. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Edition, which edition is this?
Silence Speaks, the latest edition, page 251.
Okay, I have first edition. Anyway, ठीक.
Okay. The index that has changed a bit.
Wait for a little more, sir.
Another 5 minutes we'll wait and
sure.
Shall we get started?
We'll start.
Go ahead, sir. Dakshinamurti, sir.
Yeah. Faith and surrender and Abhyas. Path of love. In the spiritual phase, faith in the Guru or the Master starts when the sadhak begins to feel that whatever the teacher gives out is correct and to his advantage. When it is so, he accepts it with submission. By and by, when he begins to feel more and more convinced and satisfied by experience and association, his reliance on the Master grows stronger and his submission increases. Faith thus begins to develop in a way, and he begins to assume an unquestioning attitude. This usual routine is applicable to those who aspire for the realization of the God and proceed on the path with their eyes wide open. But for one like myself, I may assure you that I did not step into this field with an object of realizing God. I had no such intention or purpose or aim. I was blind to everything except the one I sought for. I sought for him and him alone, my master. He was to me all in all. Nothing else was in my view. His image alone was implanted deep within my heart. I never looked to anything but to his form. I never craved for the joy and the comfort of the world, nor even of heaven. I felt perfectly unconcerned with God. All that I craved for was the attainment of an end like that of his. Nothing short of it and nothing beyond. I had absolutely no desire for the realization of God, even if it be on my part an act of blasphemy in the popular sense. I was so mad with love for him that I had lost my power of vision for all things. People may condemn it as blind faith, but my love madness pulled me up to it, and I like to linger within the dark, gloomy atmosphere of love, rather than enjoy the blissful state of Anandam, but I like to keep it reserved exclusively for myself, and I do not induce any other to follow this mad course. His every gesture was to me the revelation of the divine mystery. His every word a volume of spirituality, and his every action the exposition of the unknown. I had no choice or liking, nor even a sense of discrimination between the right and the wrong. To me, everything of this was what it ought to be. I was in complete submission to his will and could never think otherwise, even for a moment. I literally followed the following concept. Course. If your spiritual guide asks you to dye your prayer carpet with wine, do it. For he, having traveled himself the entire distance, is well aware of all ups and downs of the path. Any comments, sir?
Straightforward answer.
We continue.
Yeah.
One might think it a serious blunder on my part. My simple answer to it would be that, like Majnu, I was beside myself with the madness of love, and a Majnun can best be judged from the viewpoint of Laila. I was concerned solely with my beloved Laila. This is, in a word, about me and my condition. But for others, I do not insist upon their taking up the same course of mad love.
Idi a small background to understand how the mind shapes your perception actually. As far as I can remember, I think Majnu was the brother of the king of that place or whatever. So he falls in love with Laila, and Laila was supposed to be not so beautiful to look at. And king actually calls Majnu to his assembly and then parades all beautiful women. He says, select some of the beautiful women and probably marry whatever you like, because they're all beautiful when compared with Laila actually. He says, you do not understand at all. You have to look at Laila from my viewpoint, from my vision. If you look, then only you'll be able to understand my mind. He tells his the king actually. The idea is person is the same, but the eye changes. That means the perception completely changes. Like suppose now we feel that the external reality is real, but the invisible subtle divine presence is just an idea which our gurus or which is written in our sacred books. But then the eye still sees the external reality as more real than God. But if a person meditates, the structure of the eye changes. It starts seeing God everywhere. Like Majnu, you was able to see a unique beauty for which he was mad after Laila, even though other people saw that she was a very ugly person. So the object is the same, but the eye which is seeing seems to totally change actually. So that is the idea. So when we meditate, finally, when your consciousness merges in the divine consciousness, then the total perspective or the perceptions itself will totally change. You're no more perceiving people as different from you, no more perceiving good or bad. Everything changes actually totally. So that is a little bit of psychology behind the consequences of mad love actually. You become the one whom you love. So you keep on thinking about God, like that Brahmara Kita Nyaya is there, no? That means the wasp, it is scared of that bee, wasp which tries to sting. It keeps on living continuously in fear of that, and then it becomes a wasp itself. That's called Brahmara Kita Nyaya actually. What you think, you become that. So you keep on loving God, you become God. I mean, it occupies your entire mind actually. So finally, yoga, Lord Krishna has brought bhakti into yoga. So we have to make an attempt to develop bhakti, because when bhakti keeps on developing in its full form, that only leads to surrender actually. So that is the main point which we have to understand actually. Okay, sir, we'll go. I mean, this, I just thought that we should know, even though she was very ugly, he was madly in love with her. And from his perspective only, you will understand why he was so madly in love. Not from our perspective, you may say that that fellow is a fool actually.
The Shastras may be of value to those who aspire for the realization of God or attain the bliss of paradise and the joyful company of the Houris, celestial damsels. Since I had no such aspirations, they were not of much avail to me. Besides, though the Shastras deal with topics related with the divine, and for that reason great importance is attached to them, there is also admittedly a good deal of ambiguity in them, for the safeguard of which the sage Manu has laid down in clear terms that whatever is not appealing to reason in the Vedas should not be accepted and followed. Regarding their spiritual merit, I can safely say that since they deal with elementary rules and principles, they are really meant for the beginners of spirituality. If you take into account any of its Shrutis, you will find that it relates to the necessary requisites of the elementary stage. They may, however, be studied for the sake of theoretical knowledge to make one a learned Pandit or a philosopher. But their utility in the practical field is not of much account. In fact, the sphere of spirituality begins from the point when one has reached the shores of the infinite ocean Whatever seems to be there before that point may be deemed to be a mere reflection of spirituality. All the Srutis positively relate to conditions below that level. Besides, they are for the most part influenced by the effect of environment and the geographical conditions of the places where they were composed. For example, if any of the Shastras had been written in the polar region, surely there would have been no insistence on daily bath or restriction on meat diet. As a matter of fact, they offer general rules of conduct and discipline based on the personal experiences of the rishis who composed them in close collaboration with the environment and conditions of the place.
ఇది ఇప్పుడు modern psychology, they're all talking the influence of the environment in which we are embedded. Our emotions and our feelings, our behavior, our perceptions are totally influenced by the society in which we are embedded. So thinking that we are independent and our thoughts are independent, and then that is not true. Our thinking and our behavior is shaped by the environment. Environment means the physical environment, the climate, the flora and fauna, and the people around us. The religion they follow, the social customs they follow, all those things actually shape the way we perceive things actually. So in spirituality, we try to transcend all these things, get out of the straight jackets, as it were.
Now, to return to my point, as for the relative position of the Guru and God, I may say that this question crops up only when one means to aspire for the realization of God through the help and guidance of the Guru. When such is the case, it is evident that the two, God and Guru, are both in his view. In that case, the third one, that is the self of the devotee, also can by no means be ignored. Thus, it comes to a trinity like that of Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. He thus remains fixed on this trinity, which may otherwise mean multiplicity. But so far as spirituality is concerned, our real purpose is to march from diversity to unity, and then beyond it to whatever it might be. But the course we thus take up leads to the reverse of what we aspire for. What is to be done under the circumstances is for each one to decide for himself. For myself, I solved the problem in my own way by resorting to madness, the madness of love for a fellow being. The same may be a solution for another, provided he gets a master like him, who is infallible, superhuman, and divine in the true sense.
ఇప్పుడు serious question comes here, sir. Like suppose Lalaji is there, Lord Krishna is there, Babuji is there, and later on, if you take the situation of the mission, or Dr. Casey, and so many people are there. So that problem arises because multiplicity is there. That's why this is a question each one should raise within himself and try to answer for himself. Because we are going towards unity. And in yoga also, this ekagra vritti means ekagra vritti leads to samadhi. That means if in your chit lake, in your mind, suppose you entertain two things, like suppose you think of divine light, that is an object, And suppose you also next time think of Babuji Maharaj, that's another vritti in your mind. So the mind cannot get united either with divine light, either with Babuji also. So mind can get united if there's only one object of meditation. And if that thought related to that object comes repeatedly in the mind gets identified with it, and then only that's called ekagra vritti, which leads to absorption and samadhi. So one of the aspects which comes to understanding or development of spirituality is you narrow down your the final object gets narrowed to only one thing, either the Guru or God. You have to choose between Guru or God. You can't choose multiple Gurus. You can't say Lord Krishna is or Buddha is my Guru, or Lalaji is my Guru, Babuji is my Guru. Like that, you have to only one thing you have to choose. Otherwise, that's why Babuji's system, if you follow, he says, think of divine light without luminosity. And revered sir has abundantly made it clear that when we are talking about divine light without luminosity, it means the consciousness of Babuji only. That's what. But the subtlest thing we are thinking. So he has made things easy for us by doing the homework. And but this question has to be addressed by all of us. Otherwise, the problem of hierarchy of gurus, the order of gurus, and all that will lead to confusions in the mind. Babuji himself is raising this point here. Whether we should think about Babuji or Lalaji or Rajgopalachari or K.C. Vardachari or Kasturi, so many people are devoted to so many people. But the question which we have to raise is this. Each person should think deeply and come to his own conclusion. Clue is there in this article. We have to contemplate on this.
So he clearly says from diversity to unity and then beyond it. So in this paragraph, he says diversity to unity and then beyond it. So whatever it might be. So that is the ultimate being.
But if you take, if you try to think of God as well as Guru, then we are going on the reverse direction.
Diversity, yeah.
Suppose many people in disciples of Babuji were attached to Kasturi, were attached to Raghavendra Rao, were attached to Srivastava. They used to think of both people. In really, because they were very close, they were attached to one senior preceptor, but they were also used to think about God. Then the reverse question comes into, it moves away from unity actually.
Yeah.
So this is a serious philosophical question. Actually, sir also in Bodhayanti Parasparam, he raises this issue. In an article titled actually the attitudes for meditation, he talks about from the Vaishnava perspective about 4 points will be there, which is Atmanikshepana and all that, Krupanatva, and then Sharanagati and all that. He talks about it. There also he talks that this confusion should not be there. If this confusion is there, you will not be able to succeed in meditation. Somebody can read that actually, Dharmesh, volume 1 mein, the attitudes towards meditation. He raises this point actually.
Yeah, let me find out that article.
Afterwards, we'll finish this, then we can read about it.
Mother, we need to understand, are we meditating, are we following Babuji's principles or somebody else's principles? If Babuji isn't, Babuji gave a system. The system is clear. You pray you meditate on the divine light. And he gave clearly, there is no confusion there. What he did was different, and what he gave to us is different.
Yeah.
Therefore, we have to follow what he says. And
That's
then
true,
the confusion of
No, but
meditating and different people. No. What you are saying is correct. I'm just trying to say the confusion comes because they're not following the system. The system he has given, simplified, as you said.
Yeah.
He has actually gone through the whole thing and gave a gist to us, and this is what you do. He did his homework. Therefore, we need to follow what Babuji has said. And are you following? If you are following Sri Ramchandra consciousness or whatever he says is you are following, then that confusion should not come to people's mind. It is because of their immaturity of thinking, not following the system, not meditating, these confusions come. Babuji has given what he has done, and now he has produced a system, and that's why we're all attracted to that system. And therefore, we should be following that system totally.
That is, in fact,
and that's what KCN many times told, many times. He has been saying innumerable times, but people, they accept only certain points and they leave certain points, whatever that suits them.
Keshav, if you remember yesterday's discussion we had about one of the shloka in Bhagavad Gita, he says, I am telling you the most secret of secret, guhya taram tara, vimrushyati tatha kuru ante. What I've told you, the most important secrets, vimrusht, and a word in the Sanskrit word, it's so that means you deliberate on what I have told very deeply, think deeply about what I have told, then come to a conclusion, he says. So people are not deliberately thinking deeply about what Master has said. That is a problem, actually. So if you think deeply, as you are now, there's no confusion in your mind. You have to arrive that conclusion by your own deep thinking. By reading books, you imagine that you understood everything. That is a very superficial understanding. If you probe deeper, then only that probing deeper requires a little bit of hard work. Then only confusion disappears in it. He says, Nashto moha smriti labdha. That means now my confusion is cleared, he says. This confusion can lead to lack of success in meditation, actually.
Of course. You don't know your goal and what you are trying to pray and meditate.
Right.
Gone, finished.
So idi anni kodiga deep ga think cheyala. You have to deliberate more deeply and then have a clear understanding in your own self. Then only you will be benefited. Otherwise, you will be, superficially you will be moving.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. If you don't have that clarity, instead of going towards unity, you'll be going back to on the reverse way to multiplicity. That's the point he wants to make here in this paragraph.
Malok sir chadan sir clear అయిపోతది.
Yeah.
But the course because
yeah, I will read it. Now to return to my point, as per the relative position of the Guru and God, I may say that this question crops up only when one means to aspire for the realization of the God through the help and guidance of the Guru. When such is the case, it is evident that the two, God, whatever it might be. But the course we thus take up leads to the reverse of what we aspire for. What is to be done under the circumstances is for each one to decide for himself.
For myself, hold on.
Yeah.
He says what is to be done is for each one to decide for himself. Each one has to decide. There will be no guide here.
Right.
Each one has to decide for himself. Yeah.
For myself, I solved the problem in my own way by resorting to madness, the madness of love for a fellow being. The same may be a solution for another, provided he gets a master like him, who is infallible, superhuman, and divine in the true sense. they say that one must love his Guru as much he loves God. In my view, that is quite impracticable, for there can never be two parallel objects of love. The human heart is not a caravanserai where any and everyone may come in to have his stay. Love admits of no dual loyalties, not to speak of multiplicity. There is no room even for the duality of the lover and the beloved. जब मैं था तब तू नहीं, अब तू है मैं नहीं. प्रेम गाली अति संकरी तमे दो ना समाही. Somebody can who is a good in Hindi can read that again.
It's okay. You can go.
When I was there, thou art not. Now thou art there, I am not. The love lane is very narrow and cannot contain two, I and thou. Such is the path of love. It is also an answer to the question regarding the relative position of Guru and God. That means we have to ignore either of the two. For this, Swami Vivekananda remains us saying, know thy Guru as Brahma. That is the only solution. But this does not apply to professional gurus who teach and preach for their earning or who are after name, fame and riches. On my part, I am ever prepared to offer myself for any service, be it spiritual or even physical, since I find most of the people not in need of my spiritual service. Let them have at least physical service from me so that they might get some comfort and ease. I do not mind if I am put to some inconvenience on that account. For physical afflictions, I have already many, so a little addition to it will not matter much. In all physical afflictions, I feel a peculiar kind of happiness and joy, which is not attainable even by the greatest kings. I have had so far numerous coverings, one after the other, but the present one which I now have, if observed minutely, will be found to be only a covering of nakedness, which is the last, and which, when cast off, shall not be replaced by another. I wish you all to be clad in the same covering of nakedness, but that is not possible so long as one remains entangled within the charms and the attractions of this outer covering, the physical body.
Dharmesh will read the attitudes for meditation. Bodhayanti Parasparam.
Yeah, let me open that one.
Index में देखा है. This is the one. Yes.
Attitudes for proper sadhana.
Somebody can read this, sir. Me chautara sir. Ikkada undi screen में.
Okay. Should I read it?
Yeah, you can read it. Yes.
Attitudes for proper sadhana. We should learn to remain quiet within, firm in the will to go through the process. These are the two attitudes basically required. We should be quiet with a firm will to go through the process, refusing to be disturbed or discouraged by difficulties and fluctuations. There are difficulties in sadhana and there are discouragements also. This is one of the first things to be learned in the practice of Raj Yoga. If we do otherwise, it will be promoting instability of consciousness. Ekagra-vritti itself is affected otherwise. A simple and sincere call and aspiration from the heart is the most important thing and is essential than capacities. Sincerity is what is required. Also, it is necessary to turn our attention inwards rather than outward to understand the inner call from the inner presence of the Lord. Our ways of that we go by the Pratyaksha Jnana. Pratyaksha Jnana depends upon the senses, five senses. Whatever knowledge we get it through our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, and our touch. We are not aware of any thought or idea which is beyond the capacity of these five senses. The whole process of meditation is asking us to go beyond these five senses. That is why the knowledge gained through meditation is called aparoksha jnana. For this, we have to turn inward consciously, and in the awareness of the inward consciousness, also our thoughts are unfortunately constructs from sensory inputs. We are not capable of having thoughts which can go beyond these senses. Our consciousness is unfortunately confined to either direct inputs now or inputs that we have already received and stored in our heads as some ideas relating to certain things. Those ideas, again, sensory in content and knowledge. I'll go ahead. Non-sensory knowledge is something that we do not have. Secondly, we have experiences of more than one sensory input at a time. We have got multisensory inputs also, but non-sensory input is difficult, and our demand is for the non-sensory. It is not multisensory. Multisensory knowledge is not equal to the experience we gain during meditation. It is basically non-sensory and it has got its own realm. We learn the logic of it. The language of feeling starts. So far, the language of senses was there. All the language that we talk about is sensory. Non-sensory language is feeling. Feeling heat is a wrong word. It is a sensation. We don't feel the heat. We use the word, we feel the warmth of friendship. It is the friendship that we are trying to refer to, not the warmth. Friendship is an idea that we have got in our head, which doesn't have sensory equivalent. It contains so many things. All senses provide the input, and beyond that also, we have non-sensory inputs to understand the feelings. We have inputs from our Hori tradition also. Why I'm talking of this friendship concept is that is the word we have used for God, Sakha. Sakha is the word that has been used for God. He is a constant friend of ours. He doesn't go away from us. He maintains his friendship with us. It is a bondage which is very difficult to express in sensory words. That is why our words will fail. We will say that we have a friend. What is friendship? Nobody knows what it is. The word is very common for all of us. Fraternity, for example, that we are talking about is a construct that is non-sensory. They are feelings, and when we try to bring it down to that level of knowledge, it becomes sensory and gets disturbed. So this inner feeling is what we should learn. The spiritual atmosphere is more important than outer conditions of silence and quiet. As we progress in the path, we breathe on our own spiritual condition and live in it. This is an attitude that comes by practice only. We'll take a pause here. Lot of focus on going inside in the spiritual atmosphere.
Okay, go ahead.
We should learn to distinguish between desire and aspiration. Desire usually relates to lower levels of consciousness of body and vital parts. Aspiration relates to higher values for which we want to live. Both are based on Manomaya Kosha, the realm of mind only. The Manomaya Kosha thinks. It has got two-dimensional approach. It thinks low and it can also think high. That's why revered Babuji puts the heart higher and says the Manomaya Kosha thinks generally low. We have to think high. So our desire must become an aspiration. It is not desire to seek the ultimate. It is an aspiration. The word must be clearly understood. Desire often leads to excess of effort, resulting in much labor and limited fruit, with strain and exhaustion. In case of failure to achieve, it results in discordance, disbelief, and revolt. In some cases, extraordinary effort is put in to pull down the higher levels of consciousness, leading to violent reactions, and very often wrong forces find their way into the consciousness, and the sadhaka confuses that to be leading truly to the divine, a sort of shackles into which the practicant gets into. I have seen this particularly in 2 or 3 Abhyasis who are practicing meditation who wanted to bring it by force. They got into states of almost madness, mere madness, aberrations happen. We have to yield to the divine. Coercing something will not work. When the vital being is under play, impatience and restless disquietude creeps into the aspiration also. Even in aspiration, when the vital beings are there, the impatience creeps in and the restlessness starts. These two characteristics are Rajasic in nature. So, in order to avoid these characteristics, we generally suggest not to take Rajasic food, not to move in Rajasic company. Otherwise, we will become restless. If your mind has been already put into enormous Rajasic stuff, like watching a movie, your mind will not be calm. It will not undo it. Ultimately, there is nothing right or wrong. What is appropriate? What is inappropriate is what we should know. The viveka of a person lies in deciding what is good for his sadhana. Appropriate alone should be taken into consideration. Aspiration should not be of the form of desire, but it should be a feeling of one's soul's need and a quiet, settled will to turn towards the divine and seek the divine. It is not easy to get rid of the mixture of desire entirely, but with the help of the master, it should be possible for all sadhakas if they work diligently towards this end. One has to work on himself. Only by practice is it possible for us to develop calm, discrimination, and detachment without indifference. This is the condition in knots 1 and 1a. I changed this word from that of Babuji. He used to say develop due attachment. I said detachment without indifference. I thought that this expresses the idea much better. The same thought I'm trying to express from a different set of words. Indifference is what we should avoid. Detachment has to go. Viveka has to come. What is Viveka? Viveka is to remain calm, quiet, seeking him ultimately, waiting for him. Go ahead.
Yes, yes.
This leads us to a condition to live within. in a constant aspiration for the divine and to look at life with a smile and to remain peaceful, whatever the outer circumstances are. Unless Viveka develops, unless particular amount of Vairagya also develops, this equanimity of mind is not possible to the outer circumstances. Without developing detachment or keeping ourselves only to due attachment, we will not be in a position to move towards the higher plane. This is the Viveka, which is a must. What are the planes? In all the 5 planes, it will operate. In each one, we should move towards the moderation. Moderation is the principle. Balancing is the principle. Balance means always 2 forces are there. There are 2 forces which may appear heavier at different times. Our effort should be to balance. Balance is not a static condition, it is a very dynamic condition. We should learn to yield to the method and the master. In any field of activity, we should follow the guidelines and then expect results. For everything, there is a method. We have to follow the method sincerely. If we find the result, we should continue it. If not, leave. Find something else which works. But during the process, don't try something else. When we are doing this method, we should not try some other method. We should be sincere in the method. There is no point in trying to ride 2 horses at a time. Sincerity means single-pointed approach, ekagra-vritti, sincerity of approach. When we are trying to do a mathematics problem, let our mind be on the mathematics problem. Let it not go to physics. That is sincerity. If we attend sincerely to our work, we will definitely achieve it, because sincerity means only this much. Don't deviate from the task and the method that you have chosen. Follow it. See the result. Sincerity is a must. It is necessary to note that divinity is the goal, and the way to that is also divine. We cannot reach divine directly by our effort. We require divinity to help us to reach divinity. There are 2 aspects of the divinity. One is it is the goal, and it is also the method and means. That is why thou art the only God and power to bring us up to that stage is brought as a prayer. It is not a prayer, it is an attitude that we are asked to develop. By repeatedly thinking about that particular thought, we get into the attitude of seeking the divine support to reach the divine. To serve means to love. To obey means to love. To sacrifice means to love. Without these 3 characteristics, there is no point in talking about love. Love demands all these 3. To be consciously aware of the master is not possible under all circumstances. Efforts in that direction may lead to insincerity in work and other relationships. Therefore, we should develop a method of remembering him subconsciously. Trust and faith in the master gives us such capacity for subconscious awareness. Surrender is the very difficult to practice without learning the principles of love, devotion, faith, and obedience. This is the Master's message today. My experience tells me that as we tend to think we are independent and not interdependent, the process of surrender becomes difficult to start. Interdependency alone allows us to yield to somebody else. Surrender becomes possible only then. Independent people cannot surrender. Only when we know our relationship of dependency on somebody, we can surrender. And interdependency is a vital truth of existence. The plane whose noise we hear is also dependent on us, and we are dependent upon that. That is the extent of knowledge that we should go to understand interdependence. Nothing that is there in the universe is something that is disconnected with us. For all process of perception or sensory knowledge, it may appear so, but we are connected to it. One of the wisdoms of our land is the Sakuna Shastra. Sakuna Shastra asks us to understand how much dependent we are on other things. We need to accept a particular faith or belief, but we have to accept the point of interdependency. We tend to believe we are the doers of any action and refuse to accept the participation of others. Every effort that we have put in any field, for that matter, there is a joint effort. Somebody else is also involved, but we tend to think that it's our own work and put a spoke to surrender. We always tend to enjoy the results of any effort exclusively and do not share with others, and thus put a spoke to surrender. This is one of the principles that we have learned in our country by tradition itself. We go to some Tirthayatra or pilgrimage, we get prasad, we distribute to all. We don't keep it to ourselves. We do not accept something that has come to us from the divine as something as our own. It is something to be shared, is the consciousness that we have developed, an attitude that is a must in the field of surrender. D. We tend to think that everything is from God and do not yield to the Master, trying to distinguish between them on rational grounds. Guru Devo Bhava is another concept that we should understand. We cannot distinguish between Guru and God. Basically, this has led to many problems of Gurudom. The Gurudom theory is not being substantiated here, but we should know there is a part of the Master also in the Guru, and we should never think that we have got direct relationship with divine without this interdependency on one more person or many more such persons in the middle. Each person is a Guru. We tend to enjoy the divine attributes as if they are our own to the exclusion of the Master. We get divine attributes, many qualities we get of trying to help others, general tendency of tolerance. All these things we think are ours. We try to enjoy the results also, refusing to think that it is Master's. That is how the Gurudom develops. These are all the problems of surrender. We'll take a pause here. Anything to? So this is what you were mentioning, right, earlier, the God and the Guru. Yeah. It is necessary to learn that Master is the A. doer, B. enjoyer, C. knower of every action and thought of ours. That is the meaning of total surrender. This is possible only when we move on to the knot 4 initially and much later in knot 9. Pranahuti helps us achieve this condition provided we put in necessary effort through the meditations on point A and B. The balance condition comes when we A. live in the thought of Master always from birth, as some saints have done, or B. live in the company of Master physically when avatars, prophets come into existence. When we do not have these two possibilities, C. Live working and doing everything according to Dharma and instructions from the Master. Live as if everything is an instruction from the Master. We do everything, then a balanced condition is possible. Or live working and doing everything according to Dharma as if the Master himself is the doer. So these are the 4 different options that is given. These are the 2 alternatives that we find in the reality at dawn given by Master to us. First 2 are not ours. Actually, they relate to some extraordinary persons like Sukha, Namalwar. These are the people who are born with the thought of the Master and lived like that. They never thought about anything else in their lifetime. They were born Brahmagyanis and they were not even dependent on food for others. When questions were put about food, they simply ignored it. They said, we live in the divine, we breathe the divine, and we eat the divine. The other type of people are like Lakshman, who used to be with Rama always to the exclusion of anything else. They are not bothered of anything else. That is possible only when the avatar is there. The other 2 above mentioned points are possible for us. These are the 4 conditions that are given in Bhagavad Gita as the conditions of Sthita Prajnatva. Who is a Kaba or Sthita Prajna? He answers like this. A series of 20 shlokas are there. We should know he is the doer, he is the enjoyer, he is also the person who does the action. Kartatva, Bhoktatva, Gyatrutva, knower of things. These attitudes are a must. Once we know this, then we don't grant ourselves certain knowledge that we have got through meditation. We will never start thinking that we have advanced this much. God Himself in us is advancing in His own way to His perfection. That is the meaning of our life. Our life has no meaning by itself except as opportunities for the divine to express itself through us. It is the opportunity God Himself has provided for Him to show His greatness to the world. All our capacities must get exhibited. We can't simply ignore our capacities. Our capacities are used for the good of others. Try to say that it is the Master who himself is expressing. I think that is the attitude. Then we get a balanced condition. Anything to add before we go to some important points for effective sadhana? So we'll go ahead. Some important points to be kept in mind for effective sadhana. The mind is generally in a state of unsettledness with so many thoughts and feelings, and every sadhaka has to come to a state of settledness in the thought of his meditation. For this, the main thing to understand is the dynamics of mental states. The unsettledness of the mind, which is otherwise called kshipta, state of mind, is the beginning of sadhana. The goal is to arrive at settledness or samadhana. But the mind, which was given an object of meditation, namely that of divine light, in most cases only struggles itself with a very many thoughts and getting tired enters into a state of torpidity or mudhatva. Most of the sadhakas confuse this with calmness or subtleness. Instead, the sadhaka should endeavor to get into a state of at least vikshipta, that is, thinking about certain things that seem to be somehow at least related to the object of meditation, like the thought of the spiritual way of life, the dwelling place of the master, etc., and also other attributes related to